Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. It's always wonderful to be with you, spend time with you, and just love our conversations pre and post recording.
Yeah, and in between, we should have that kind of the behind the scenes show where people get to hear what we talk about between podcasts, because it's. I think they might be surprised at how ordinary. I mean, when I hear people speak that I really think they really have a handle on some great information like yourself. I'm always surprised when they talk about baseball and football and what was on the table for dinner last night. And so they'd enjoy it. So today we continue our series in February of just helping people with emotional health. It's been fantastic. I have really benefited just from listening to the language that kind of categorizes and helps me aim my life more specifically towards health. And today we're going to continue with our next part. What is that next part?
So, Jim, this is the third piece of the puzzle, and it's called filling your emotional tank. One of my favorite verses of scripture is in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I just love the invitational part of that. And he goes on, he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." And I love that part, learn from me. You know, it's like, watch me, watch how I do it. And if you watch how Jesus did it, he had this amazing rhythm of ministry and rest, being with people and being alone. And then he goes on to say, "For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And, for a leader, the rest Jesus promises here often seems elusive. And Jim, I wonder why you think that is. I mean, why do you think it is elusive?
Well, I think the world is under the influence of a lot of spiritual things that have thievery at their core. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And there's a lot in this world that would steal, dilute, pollute our hearts, our time. I think the road is narrow that leads to life. I think the road is broad that leads to destruction. So I don't know. We're kind of walking a narrow road towards an eternal King that's saying, "Come here, I got this." So I know that we've been given peace. So if we're missing it, something has been stolen from us. It's not. We have to find it. We have to reclaim it. Something has been taken from us that's rightfully ours. And often, I would say more often than not, I give it away. I let the newscast, I let the opinion, I let the social media post, I let the hurtful words get deeper into me than I should. And it also exposes that I haven't really buffeted myself with a defensive, with faith, with the shield of faith. I know who I am in Christ. So no one can take that away from me. I know what I'm called to do. So nobody's opinion is anything more than just that. We're trying to live clean in a really filthy world. There's a challenge there for sure. It's not going to happen accidentally. It's going to happen very proactively, very much on purpose.
One of the things I think too, that Jim, I think that our culture, the pace of our culture has really influenced the church. Now, COVID has interrupted that to some degree. I was talking to a pastor, several pastors last week who said the same exact thing. They said, "John, I'm not as busy as I used to be, but I'm more tired." And I said, "Well, I think it's because the things you are doing are requiring a lot more out of you."
Yes. Yeah.
And
I only had 10 appointments this week and they were all funerals. Well, of course you're exhausted. Right. Only had 10 appointments. They're all weddings. Of course you're exhausted. Those are extremely emotional things. And we live at a very emotional age.
We really, really do. So when it comes to really getting our arms around mental fitness, I believe prevention is almost always easier. And I know for sure it's more cost effective than recovery. And so I'd like us to talk about 3 preventive behaviors that will fill your tank and keep it filled. How's that sound?
I'm in. I'm all in.
Here's the first one. Sensible scheduling.
Yeah.
I hardly ever get an amen on that, Jim, when I speak in public from leaders. But I think leaders tend to operate in the realms of extreme. when it comes to their calendar. It's either their calendar is either stuffed or it's nearly empty.
Right.
You know, and if your calendar is consistently jammed, we're not suggesting here that you go to the other extreme of tumbleweeds, you know, blowing through your calendar,
Right.
so to speak. You know, if our calendar is always overstuffed, I think we've got to ask this question, the hard question. And the hard question is one word, and that is why?
Yeah. Right.
Why? Am I overestimating how much I can get done in a day? Right. Or a week? I think Chris Brooks, and I might chop this up and it won't sound as good as he said it in one of the podcasts that he did with us. I think it was pod 71, where he said, you know, we overestimate what we can get done in a week. We underestimate what we can get done in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a profound statement, you know.
Yeah.
So am I overestimating my ability to get something done in any given day or week? Am I having problems with the jam calendar because I'm trying to prove my value?
Right.
Or is it because I'm afraid of what I'll discover about myself if I slow down?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that why question. Give me some thoughts.
Well,
on it.
I think that people burn out not because of what they say no to, they burn out because of what they say yes to. And I think if you understand what you're supposed to do, then you understand to some degree what you're not supposed to do. I am not a marriage counselor. I learned right away. It takes everything out of me. It almost had a universal lack of success. When there was a success, I don't know, it wasn't satisfying enough to, 100 hours to have one breakthrough, 100 hours of bad to have one moment of breakthrough, often ending in divorce later. So I learned that I need to find someone who's good at that, or admit that I'm not. So, you're our pastor. We need counseling. Counselor. Well, I know someone who's a brilliant marriage counselor, and because I care about your marriage, I'm a general physician, and you have a brain tumor. You need a cranial oncologist you need someone who's going to save your life, not someone who's going to give you an aspirin, and not feel like I was doing them a disservice by not serving them at all, but actually saying the best thing I can do for you is nothing, but to point you in the direction of someone that can actually help you. So if your calendar is always full, there are issues because you're not moderating your own life well. And it could be insecurities. It could be a sense of everybody needs something from me. And you and I both know this. When you've given everything you have, there'll always be a line of people wanting more.
Well, and that's
when you're exhausted and you do something else for a living, they'll stop calling you. They'll move on to the next victim and they'll say you failed them. So you have to take control of your own life because the fruit of your life is extraordinarily important.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, your calendar will get control of you if you don't get control of it. It will take over.
I'm laughing because when I went into the inner city children's ministry and something called Master's Commission in the mid 80s, it was 100 bus kids from the inner city Phoenix. I had 2 weeks with the existing pastor before I was the pastor. And I said, what do I do? He said, I have no idea. This is all I can teach you about inner city bus ministry. Have a wonderful program prepared for them, or they'll have a wonderful program prepared for you. Those are your only two choices. So, man, I had a wonderful program prepared. There's popsicles and clowns and puppets for the moment they got on, the moment I got off. And the same is true, right? Either you have a plan or that you work, or everybody else's plans will work you into the ground. And
that's right.
It's tragic.
Yeah. Well, here's the second one, Jim. Okay. We're talking about ways to fill your tank. So one of the ways you fill your tank is by being reasonable with your calendar.
Yeah.
And one more thing real quick, acknowledging that you don't have an unlimited supply of energy.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge behavior. Here's the second one, and that is human bonding. I think COVID pandemic has really shown us the value of relationships more than I think we've imagined them to be.
The cost of not having it is
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Ecclesiastes 4:9, 2 are better than one because they have a good return for their work. I mean, that, I've used that when I perform wedding ceremonies. But it has a much broader application. Being a leader in normal times sets you up for isolation.
Yeah.
During COVID times, it has gone to the extreme. And so we are seeing not surprisingly, a significant uptick with pastors and leaders suffering with anxiety and depression, suicidal thoughts. Listen, God has never designed us for long-term isolation. He's designed us for moments, Jim, I believe, of solitude.
Sure.
But and those are good for me, especially I'm an introvert, so some solitude really helps me refuel. But there's a big difference between solitude and isolation.
Yeah.
And when we are disconnected from people, and we've got all kinds of stats now from the last year to prove this,
yeah.
it leads to emotional trouble.
Yeah. Consistently, not in 5% of cases, right? It's 95% of cases.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think my wife is the exception. She's like, finally, I don't have to hug people. She's an introvert. She's a D on the DISC assessment. She doesn't like small talk. So finally, I can just get my job done and get out and no one touches me. But I think 95% of the people are missing that hug, missing that. And when they go to a church that's socially distanced and assigned seating, it's, which is a reasonable thing to do. We do that. But people that are looking for connection when they come to church, it almost makes it worse. It's like you can smell the food, but you can't taste it from where they put them. Yeah.
Right. And Jim, and I can even flip this thought this way, that if you are suffering with anxiety and depression, there are many things that you need to do to get well. But if you miss this one, Jim, if you miss the relational aspect of getting well, you'll never get well fully. No. So this piece just matters so much. I always talk about Genesis 2:18. It seems like I talk about it every day, every week. God said about Adam, it is not good for the man to be alone. And so he knew that Adam needed other human beings to do life with.
Can you imagine someone being shipwrecked and all they had was, food, water, shelter, and a complete library of the Bible and Bible study guides. And for 20 years, they studied nothing but the words that are translated into love. And to think that person is the utmost scholar on the planet in what those words mean. Yet the guy knows nothing about love because it's never been tested. Never, iron has never met iron. It's a rusty tool that really is not sharpened yet because you need proximity.
And pastors struggle with this, right? Pastors struggle with this.
Oh yeah.
Especially lead pastors. Like, I can't trust anybody, or I don't have any friends, or look, and I appreciate that. You've been a lead pastor a long time. I was a lead pastor for 7.5 years. And one of the first things to go, if we're not careful, is this. And we can make all the excuses we want to. If you don't have any people you can make friends with in your city, go visit the next city over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find somebody, because it's so important. It's you can't skimp on this, Jim, and stay healthy mentally and emotionally. It just can't be done.
Now, if it was all information, Jesus would have written a book and we'd have read it. But he didn't. He said, follow me. And following him, there were storms, there were deserts, there was cold, there was rejection, there was fellowship. You're talking about the rhythm of Jesus. It looks like he goes from great thing to great thing to great thing. But if you read the geography, he's in Capernaum, and the next day he's, the next story, he's in Bethany. Well, that's a 3-day walk.
There you go.
3 days of fresh air, sunshine, dear friends, campfires, stories, and then they cast out demons. And then it's 3 days in a boat to get to the other. So there's a lot of, it isn't germane, it seems, to the story, but in the telling of the story to someone who's familiar with the geography, we're talking about days sometimes between major draining events. And they're days of clean air, sunshine, water that's not polluted. It's a different day, and we need those between major events. We need good friends and campfires and long walks. And yes, there's a pace that's unimaginable, but before and after those unimaginable moments, there's a pace that I think we know probably very little of. We would call it a camping trip. Jesus called it Tuesday. It was just part of his everyday life. Yeah, I miss the desert. I lived in Phoenix for years. There's just something about sitting up on top of a mountain alone, looking over a valley, something about cactus. I don't know what it is, but I guess I get the same deer hunting sitting in a tree. But there's something about being alone in God's creation where God speaks to you differently. Yeah. Okay.
So here's the third one, Jim, and that's the emotional mapping. And that might be a new term.
I like it.
to our listeners. I use a GPS when I travel to places I've never been before,
Right.
Especially. And I like to use a GPS even when I know where I'm going, just in case there's an accident and I need to be rerouted. But I think very few of us map out our emotional journey. And you know what? This isn't complicated at all, Jim. I want to give like 3 or 4 markers real quick on our journey toward mental and emotional fitness. Marker 1, laughter. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And so we believe in the power of laughter. There's this feel-good rush when we've had a belly laugh. That's chemical in nature, and feel-good chemicals in our brain get released. Stress is tamped down, and everything seems right with the world when we've had a good laugh. So that's one. And I tell you, the work we do is so serious. We're talking life and death. We're talking eternity, right? It's as serious as it gets. Man, do we need people in our life who help us not to take ourselves so seriously and allow us to laugh and enjoy the fun part of life.
I've never, as a pastor now, senior pastor for 26 years, we've hosted a lot of funerals and then funeral lunches. I've never done a funeral that didn't include tears. And I've never hosted a lunch that didn't have a room full of people dying laughing. And I don't know why, but I think we just intuitively know there's a time to cry, but there's also a time to laugh.
That's right.
All the stories come out at the lunch, and everybody starts talking about what a goofball, he was, or the time she tripped down the stairs, or whatever it is. And everybody, there's nothing but tears. It seems like at funerals normally, but the lunches where we get together, there's something cathartic about remembering the good stuff as well.
That's right. That's right. So that's marker 1. So if you're listening today, Jim and I both want to tell you, lighten up. and have some fun. Here's the second one, and that is exercise. Marker 2, exercise. It really does to our brain much of what laughter does. It helps us to burn off nervous energy. It reduces our stress. Recent research suggests that exercise may actually help us create new brain cells, which is fascinating. And I just know for me, Jim, that the preventive action of exercise has been a lifesaver for me. It does things for me nothing else can do for me in terms of my emotional and my mental well-being. And pastors tend to be so sedentary, and even like CEOs tend to really struggle with this. But it is super important.
It's oxytocin, endorphins, all the feel-good chemicals. As a longtime distance runner, I have started 100 runs or more with severe issues on my heart and mind. I'm just going to go for a run. And by the time I come back, this is how many times, 0 times have I come back with that same problem. It is the cure. And I have a clarity about it. God speaks to me often on long runs. Somehow it's meditative. And maybe you get that from the weight room. Maybe you get that from a stretching class. I don't know, but there's just something about, burning off stress through the exerting of your body that is powerful. I think our adrenaline has to have a place to go. It's going to go inward. It's going to go outward. And to let it all out on a good long run or just a good healthy walk, whatever it is. But, that's one of the reasons I want to run outside and not at the gym is the gym has, 14 television sets filled with news and Jerry Springer and bikinis. And I'm not, it isn't just the exercise that I need. My soul needs to do something other than obsess about what I'm concerned with.
That's really good.
It frees it up.
Yep. So here's the third one. And that third marker is boredom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by boredom? Seems like it'd be a bad thing.
Well, by boredom, let me give you some examples of boring things. Okay. How do we do that? Planting flowers. I mean, it's just totally boring, for me. There's nothing exciting about planting flowers. Going to play 18 holes of golf. I mean, I like to golf, but honestly, it's boring. I mean, there's nothing really exciting. Like, man, if I sink a 40-foot putt, that, but
Yeah.
there is just nothing like really scintillating about
Right.
golf. Walking on a beach, going to an art museum. I remember when I was struggling with major depression, my father-in-law told me, he said, John, you need a distraction in your life. We're going to go to an art museum. Now, I wasn't an art appreciator. I don't know
Yeah.
that I still am,
Yeah.
but just going to the museum for an hour, Jim, and looking at paintings and artwork and
Really?
amazingly talented people,
Huh.
boring as all get out, but it was helpful. And I think what we're saying here is that we need to inject a little bit of boring into our lives, not a lot, just a little bit, a distraction, something
Yeah.
that doesn't have eternal implications to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That and for some people it might even be a hobby that they enjoy. That again, it's not like it doesn't
Yeah.
get their cortisol or their adrenaline moving,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's just something that's different. It's a distraction. So maybe we could call this marker distraction. And that might even be better. But
Yeah.
bottom line is not being involved in something for a little bit that really doesn't
Yeah.
matter that much in terms of eternity.
My wife has a hard time staying awake if we drive more than 15 minutes in the car.
Hmm.
And I, not always, but if we're on vacation, the first thing she wants to do is rest. So the pillow, the blanket, the feet go up on the dashboard, and I'm all alone. But what's nice about that is between here and the Mackinac Bridge is she falls asleep the north side of Flint. And it is not uncommon at all that something happens just driving up 75 that wouldn't happen if I was sitting in my family room with the TV set on. That there's it requires enough of my attention to drive the car, but the creative part of me is inactive. And I think that rest kind of now there's this thought, there's a comment on the radio, but just sitting quietly behind the wheel of a car has always borne good fruit in my life. And I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about with the boredom, something that's occupying enough, but not something that takes the creative part of your soul and puts it to work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what's your last one?
So here it is. And that is sleep. And Jim, we've talked about sleep a lot on the podcast the last year and a half.
Huge.
In fact, we did an entire pod on it, episode 13, which seems like, decades ago, but it's only been a little over a year ago, on the power of sleep. 6 to 9 hours of sleep each night gives your brain the space it needs to repair itself. It's like sleep is like a cheat code. It's like a superpower. It has this amazing capacity. I can go to bed at night, Jim, thinking, I don't know if I have enough energy for the next day. This happens to me a lot. I get a good night's sleep. I wake up and I think, wow, I can tackle the day. I feel like I can get into it and I can work. And some pastors, some business owners really pride themselves on being able to get by on 4 hours of sleep. And if you're listening and that's you, I care about you enough to tell you that there is an invisible brick wall that you're speeding toward, and you will slam into that wall and you will be forced to sleep.
Right. You're borrowing.
There you go.
Maybe you're some sort of physiological, anomaly, but the vast, I would say everybody that's listening right now cannot get by on 4 hours of sleep. Even if they use an excuse, I take a nap in the afternoon for 15 minutes, or it's not healthy. One of the common denominators of people that I bury that are younger than 50 is they work themselves out of sleeping. That was the thing they gave up. They were shift workers that, they wanted to be with their family during the day, but they had to work at night. They lived off of coffee. They died before they're 50. I don't know why that is, but there's something, like say, repairing the body. The body heals itself when we're deeply resting. Yeah. So look back over the month of February now. You've done several podcasts. Can you just kind of couch the information like as a recap for us? Because I know these are 20-minute segments, but just give us the 3-minute version of all of these.
So Jim, the good news for all of us and those who are listening today is that we don't have to do 50 things to stay emotionally healthy. We just need to do a few and do them well. And so here's kind of like the, the infrastructure that I believe is required to enjoy good, sustained mental and emotional well-being. One is to become your own best friend.
Yeah.
Watch your self-talk. Understand the difference between self-care and self-centeredness. have the opinion of yourself that God does. He's a lot smarter than you. So embrace his opinion of you. Learn how to care for your soul. So that's the becoming your own best friend. Secondly, discover the power of assertiveness. It's a powerful tool in your toolkit. Essentially, it is this, that I speak the truth in love. I tell somebody who injures me how what they did hurt me, injured me, and how I would like the relationship to be moving forward. And then thirdly, and we just talked about this in this pod, is learn how to fill your emotional tank. Be aware that you're an emotional being, and that the behaviors of reading scripture and praying, and while those are important and they help to some degree, they don't always fill the emotional side. The emotional tank gets filled with a different set of behaviors. And so figure that out, because we want you not only to survive February every year, we want you to actually have energy and be able to thrive and really take on the month with as much energy and strength as you possibly can.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. John, I know there's one thing we've been offering during this month, and that is your book. Unshakable You has been such a blessing. We just hear so much great feedback. #1 bestseller of all the resources that Converge offers. Tell us a little bit about that and how we might be able to get a hold of a copy of that for ourselves.
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of a copy of the book is go to our website, convergecoach.com, and go to the shop link, and that will take you to that book. And it's a short book, Jim. I wrote that book for men to read. It's for women too. But I know that most men, if they look at a very thick book, they've already determined that it's not for them. So we wrote this book in a way that is not, it's really for the general audience. So a leader will benefit from it, but boy, your congregation, the people in your business will benefit dramatically by getting the book. So that's the best way to get a hold of it.
I think read it as a staff, digest it, go through with your leadership, make it a sermon series on Sunday morning, and invite you, the author, to come and speak at the congregation. It is that important. And if we've learned anything in the last year, it is the importance of emotional health, and how those of us that were just kind of teetering on the edge, everything that we've been through in the last 12 months has pushed us well over the edge. And so now we fix that. So many people, the statistics we've shared on previous podcasts about suicide, depression, anxiety, it is off the charts. So it's great that you're teaching people the hermeneutics of Lucan historiography, but maybe we could be a little bit more practical in what you're doing from the pulpit to really help people. So thank you, John, for sharing this week. Of course, this month has been terrific, and God bless you. And thank you for taking your previous misery and turning it into your current ministry and helping so many people. I think you were one of those guys that's born for such a time as this. So thanks so much. And to our dear listener and watcher, we are so excited that you've joined us today. Please do your best to share the message that has been shared today with others. It's free. There's no commitments involved. We just want to help people. That's what this is for. It costs this ministry money to get it to you for free. So please take advantage of this, pass it around, and we'll continue our prayers for you as you continue to lead from alignment.